For realsies?
For realsies. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Rollwise podcast, our weekly chat where we catch up on games and anything else we feel like talking about. I'm Mike, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by my two besties.
Hi, everybody. It's Brent.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff.
And this week, some of our favorite topics are going to be related to some things that we saw that kind of call back to our time with Monster of the Week and some of the other stuff. But we wanted to talk a little bit about: do you have to play a crunchy game to exhibit growth in your character? You know, because our number is the only way you can actually grow a character. And I have to say that I feel like maybe my opinion has changed on this lately. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about what do you get out of being a DM? Not to say that we're going to be DM advocates or anything like that, but as you guys have seen, we do, toss the baton here and there. And so we want to talk a little bit about, from our lived experience, what do we get out of being a DM? Share some of the things that we've seen other people talk about getting out of it. And then, of course, as always, we'll talk about what we might be excited to see. And I know that this is the time of year that if there are going to be books on sale and you've saved all your money like a good little kid, you're probably going to find something on Black Friday sale or some sort of clearance or something like that. And I just know my wife is going to be like, mother, no thanks. as all these Amazon shipments and other things start coming in. So, so if you have any deals, share with us. What are you guys buying? What are you guys seeing? Let us know. We might be interested in buying it. Who knows? So how does that sound, guys? You ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Let's
go. Okay. So where do you guys want to begin? Do you guys want to begin with games, DMing, or growth?
DMing.
Okay. Yeah, sure. DMing sounds good.
Okay. So this comes courtesy of kind of a Reddit discussion that I think Brent, you had come across?
I did. I found it.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and start us off on this this DMing business?
Well, the whole crux of the conversation is, as a DM, we put in a lot of work preparing a game, setting up a game, trying to herd the cats of players into one place at one time, at the same time, and then keep them coming. And kind of the question is what do you, as somebody who GMs forever GM or not forever GM, as somebody who does it, and I assume enjoys it, what do you get out of it? Why do you enjoy it? Was kind of the crux of the conversation. So yeah.
So of course, before Brent gets into sharing some very personal and very vulnerable thoughts around DMing and what it does for him, if you have any thoughts you'd like to share, throw them in the comments.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. You're first. Since you're GMing our big game on Wednesdays, go for it.
That's not fair. Okay, so what I would say is that GMing is kind of an interesting relationship, and I have to say that at certain points, and it kind of comes up in conversations, is it feels like people have kind of thought of me as an adversarial GM. Like it almost feels like I have this like fetish for killing players or something. I don't even know the last time I actually like TPK'd or killed a player. But when was the last time I killed a player?
It can't be outside of recent memory.
It was me. I know that, most likely.
Well, you were very likely in the running for characters that died, but I can't say that, recently I've had too many player deaths. The most recent character that you had played that I remember is actually retired and didn't die in the Blaze of Glory. So I do want to set the record straight, but it's Brett's really digging deep. The data banks are processing.
It's just the times that it happened. It's been pretty memorable.
And
I'm just gonna interrupt you really quick. I don't think I think we joke about it, but I don't think you're an adversarial GM.
No, I just want to make sure that people realize that I don't like fetishize how to like kill players and stuff like that in my games, even though we've talked about it a couple times.
It's just a character that he plays on.
Yeah, he just artificially limits your character growth by giving you a 20th of the treasure that the written module says you should have. And no magic items.
Stingy GM. I think.
Stingy is not necessarily is potentially fair.
Adversarial, I think, is a word that means you're intentionally doing things.
Yeah, you're not antagonistic.
Yeah.
So okay. So what do I get out of GMing? I these moments where I have a wonderful time with my players, because the one thing is that I've always found the games that I had the most memorable time is the games where I was a little bit stingy with stuff and it didn't all come for free. And I have to say that, the part about it for me that really excites me is that, I want you guys to have a fun time. And as part of the having fun time, I have fun, because a lot of this is there's, except for these more rules light games, I have a great time world building, getting into the creative process, writing out NPCs, thinking about, how things can go. Or when I'm not doing that for like homebrewing a game, because there was a long period of time where I was actually just using pre-written stuff because it was easier on my brain, because I was working 1 gajillion hours a week.
Yeah.
And it was fun to read what other people had put together and try to put my spin on it. Now, I have to say that since since we've started doing this podcast, I've really tried to elevate my game in how I approach things so that it's a little bit more interesting, even when we run the pre-made modules. And I have not been as self-reflective. So it's actually, I think, running these games actually allows for my own personal growth in terms of creativity and stuff. Who knows? I may even be inspired to write a book or something.
There you go.
Who knows? We'll see how that all plays out. Getting in front of a computer and typing for a few hours a day is
difficult.
Hard. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's it. But I also, before I give it back to Brent and talk about and what he gets out of this, I do want to say that, I've always learned that if you give out stuff too easily to your players, even if they complain that they don't give enough stuff, I always found that those were the more fun games because they had to be really restrictive. And I did have a point in my life where I did give a lot of stuff out at one point. And I regretted those games because they usually just all of a sudden because how you back in the day when you were playing like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or 3, and you'd use those loot tables and you'd roll on those tables to be like, oh, you're random to a random encounter. This loot table had this thing on it. And then you were like, I just unbalanced my fucking game with a couple dice rolls. Jesus.
You mean you were unhappy they were winning, is what you're saying. You were unhappy that you gave them enough loot to be winning.
Well,
I take back my adversarial comment.
It's not that they were winning. It's just that it was like it made like the loot all of a sudden unbalanced certain things, and it wasn't that I minded getting it because
well, I mean, essentially when when a character dies, it's because it's unbalanced in the other way, and and the problem is again, Brent's going to get his pot shot in here. That's easy to do at D&D,
and he goes for the layup.
Yeah, nobody knows how many hit points that kobold has. It just might be the only 200 hit point kobold on Earth. Like who knows? And you're like, oh, he crit again. Who knew that?
I think everybody knows how many hit points the kobold has, but most people don't understand the CR of 20 kobolds against your level 4 party of bards. That's the problem. Is like balancing D&D is really an art because it's all like CR is based so much on what the players have, the party composition, what they have left of their abilities and how far they've rested, and that sort of stuff. And that's hard. That's a lot of math and preparation to do.
Yeah. And I mean, I've given out some pretty fat loots, if I'm going to use the vernacular of the kids these days. And I have
any kids say that.
I think that was kids 10 years ago.
Oh shit. What would they say today? Okay, well, I gave out some good things, and I've had adventures where it hasn't necessarily been like, because I feel like giving like a +1 item feels just a little bit. I feel like if there's a story way to weave something a little bit more sentimental or memorable into it, it's much more fun. So like,
Yeah, which that's the thing. It's like in D&D, a +1 item is like nothing. Like it's silverware. Like you find it at a table.
Yeah, that's
back in the day when I was given
2 characters. And then another level later, they're just like, oh, remember this +1 thing I was so happy to get? And they just toss it over there.
Yeah.
They just drop it on the floor like they're playing Diablo or something. Like, not good enough.
Yeah, it is true. And I do have to say that I feel like back when I started playing D&D, like a +1 weapon was like a gateway into higher and higher tiers. Whereas now it's just like, you get a +1 weapon. You're exactly right. It's just like,
well, it's because you have to have it. Like at some point, you have to have it because the encounters are just going to get too hard. Like you're just not going to be able to hit things anymore.
That's true. Nothing like dying to a thing that can't be hit by something that's non-magical.
Right.
So.
Or they just have too many hit points. Like you've managed to accidentally outpace their attack bonus, their proficiency bonus by just having him. Like I said, that's what CR is hard. I'm not even going to say words like garbage and crap and bullshit and just say CR is hard.
Okay. I hope the viewers, are picking up on one of the bonuses of being a DM is to get mercilessly picked on by your players over and over and over again, just bringing up every time the smallest things didn't go their way. I'm doing it too. I'm not
picking on Mike. I said he wasn't adversarial, and I actually meant that. I made the joke earlier, but I meant that.
Yeah.
I have had a few bad GMs, and it definitely, like, you definitely do an excellent job, and you're not adversarial.
Not most of the time, at least. Sometimes I do get a little disappointed if I have a big reveal or something, and you guys just absolutely blow it for me. But that's a different kind of disappointment, because there was a thing that I thought was cool, and that I may have been nudging you towards, and then you guys just
laid out all the breadcrumbs, and we went squirrel.
Well, exactly. And then that thing just never happened. But I have to say that a lot of my most memorable and coolest stuff has happened more organically, where the players themselves were making decisions and I was building and improvising around what they were doing. And somehow I feel like when you get into really big campaigns where you've done that, you're just spinning a bunch of plates and trying to remember all the shit that you've done. I do like those kind of games. But and I think when you have that moment where you create that, like, I almost want to say like core memory. Like there's a couple of games that I've got with my friends where just, we could 10 years later, you could still go, I remember that one game. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not to say that I do it because I want to have feathers in my cap or anything, but I do like having those really memorable times, because at the time we had a great time, and then we can still go back to it.
Right. So. Like, for me, that's a good segue into me, I guess. GMing is like, I don't feel like I've had those games really where like a player will 10 years down the road say, oh, remember that game that we played in, and this was what was going on and what was really fun, and I remember my character. Like, I don't feel like I've had that game yet, and so I feel like I'm constantly looking to have that game and be a better GM and make those memorable stories, because that's what I get out of GMing. Is like, storytelling for me has always been a big part of just who I am, like between trying, my background working on being a writer and things like that. One of the things I always struggled with is, just writing things in a vacuum, like just sitting and writing for hours and stuff that maybe no one will ever see has always been difficult for me. And being able to sit at a table and create a story with people that I consider my friends, for me, is like one of the pinnacles of telling a story. Like being able to not just take the ideas I have, but the ideas I have and the ideas they have, and weave them into a cogent story that they enjoy and hopefully remember. Like those are the amazing moments for me. And yeah, I just constantly seeking that, that game that really resonates with people, I think, is one of the things that keeps me going. And it's rewarding when you find those moments that do.
And fortunately, we have some really good friends that, and I'm thinking of one friend in particular that seems to remember every game that he's ever played in. I wish I had that same memory, because he'll hit me with some stuff and he'll be like, remember that one time, Mike? And I was like, nope. But you can remind me, and it sounds really cool because you're such an enthusiastic storyteller. I love hearing about it.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I do. I'm like that with one of my other friends, where like his Earthdawn game that we played in was one of the best role-playing experiences I've ever had. And that was a TPK at the end. But I remember everybody was disappointed, not because our characters were dead, but the game was over. And like, that's sort of the experience that I hope to instill in people, is to be happy, to enjoy the game so much that they don't want it to end, even if it has to. So
I get you. And so that's us two, Jeff. What did you want to throw in there?
I don't have as much experience running games. Most of the games that I've run have been with beginners and or strangers. I haven't run a lot of the games because most of the people that we play with, we have several really strong DMs in the group, and we have people that are like, oh no, I've had this idea that I've been working on and I really want to do this. But in my experience, I have had a couple of times where it felt like I wasn't the foil for the players, where it felt like I was actually facilitating their experience, like where it felt like I kind of knew what I was doing, and I could look up at the table and I could see smiles on faces, and I could see people having fun with the encounters, even if it wasn't necessarily something that I had modified or written. I think it's very fulfilling, directing the game and being transparent enough, right? That it's not about you, it's about the game, but you are the one that's running it, and you are the one that is moving it along, and being part of that shared storytelling experience, as Brent likes to call it, is actually it's kind of magical to have people respond positively to something that you're doing. It's like being up in front of a group, on a podium and speaking, only you're a little more behind the scenes. You know what I mean? You're still that central focus, because everything that the players aren't doing, you're doing everything else. And sometimes it's a lot. I haven't had to balance high level encounters against with the CR and going, well, I can throw in 100 orcs, but if only 20% of them hit, which is statistically unlikely, they could kill 3 of the players
immediately.
Yeah, just with mediocre hits.
No.
I haven't had to do anything like that. But no, I would encourage people to try to GM. Use something pre-written. There's a lot of great material out there for whatever game system you happen to be playing. And try it. It's hard. It's harder than you think and easier than you think, and you learn something about yourself, and I think it helps you be a better player too.
I think it definitely helps you be a better player.
Oh yeah. And at this point, it feels like there's so few people running games, either referee, keeper, GM, DM, whatever name you want to assign it. It feels like that if you want to play, sometimes you just have to take the leap and run it yourself. And what if you're lucky? And I think that we've been very fortunate that this has happened, is that we've had a lot of people in our group that have stepped up to the plate. And I think we're a very good no judgment zone. So like if you have an adventure that doesn't pan out, just doesn't pan out,
No, not everyone does.
We've had duds. I mean,
yeah, and we're all pretty good at taking feedback too. That helps too. Yeah. If you're a GM and you're able to take feedback, like that helps quite a bit, because having your players be able to approach you and say, "Hey, I think you could have done this differently in a game next time," is a big deal. Like it is like GMing is like anything. It's all about the reps that you do and the feedback that you get and how you take it. Like that's one of the, I think that's one of the reasons why I think I'm the one that in the group the most that likes listening to real plays, like actual play podcasts. It's because for me, it's it's getting in those reps. Like it's hearing how somebody else runs a game, what they do. And I especially like the ones where like it's not Matt Mercer making voices and stuff. It's a regular dude GMing, and you can hear what he does to keep the story in line. And I know it's edited a little bit, but you can still hear the points in the way that they do it. And I think that's helped me even be a better GM, just getting the reps in, hearing other people doing it.
Yeah. So. Well, and I think that's a great way to put it, because we could probably put, in a separate episode, like you're a new GM, what's the one piece of advice that I hate everybody giving is just like, don't over prepare. And it's like, oh God, because it's like such an, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of stuff is
it's like, at our old job, it's one of those things where it's not feedback. Don't over prepare. Well, what does not over preparing mean? Like, it's like, just do better.
Well, exactly. So, but I think to your point, there are ways to get in reps so that if you are and if you really enjoy the hobby, it's like brewing a batch of beer. Sometimes you get a really good one, and sometimes you get something that tastes like Band-Aids, and you have to come to grips with what happened in that particular thing. And it might be that you just didn't approach a problem the way you could, or maybe you forgot a little bit of prep, but you move on. You
And
don't let that define.
Sometimes those Band-Aid tasting games actually are a lot of fun.
They could be.
The games, I'm not saying the beer is, but the games that blow up in your face, sometimes they're a lot of fun, even if they completely go off the rails and aren't what you have.
Yeah.
Aren't what you planned. Like, they're still a lot of fun. And that's kind of one of the arts of GMing too, is making the best out of a situation that you just didn't anticipate or kind of went off the rails.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you should still learn, and you're actually doing it. You're not contemplating it. You're not hoping that you get a chance. You're actually doing it. And unfortunately, it's like everything else. It's not going to go the first time the way that you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Players, as we've talked about many times, players being players are going to do weird, wacky stuff. Like, they see the breadcrumbs and they pull the Admiral Akbar. It's a trap. And they go somewhere else where there's nothing written for that. And it's like, you come to the edge of the world and fall off. You're all dead now. Thank you. I don't know.
Well, that video I shared with you guys about the perception checks, that was probably like that hits me in so many ways, because it's just like the meta of, well, we failed the perception check, so us knowing that we're trying to perceive something means that something is here.
Right.
You wouldn't ask for a perception check just for shits and giggles.
Right. So, the bell went off, so there has to be something that triggered the bell around here.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a funny thing, because you can't dice rolls should be meaningful. So having somebody roll a perception check to perceive nothing just so that they can get, they can be not sure about how a room is going to go, it would be ridiculous.
I've had people do that.
Oh, fuck that. That would be
go ahead and roll some dice.
Yeah.
And then, as far as I could tell, the dice actually meant nothing. Like,
I rolled a 20. Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool.
So what does that mean? It means that
you did a good job.
I don't have information to divulge at this time.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Well, the worst part is that let's say you start chucking dice and then they do succeed at something, and you were just like, you weren't doing it when you should. Now you have to come up with something that makes sense for what a success is, and then you're like,
this is the advice I give. I will give it on every podcast if I have a chance, to anyone who is new who runs a game. If you have a piece of information that is important to the game that you're playing and you make them roll for it, and then they don't succeed, you are going to have a problem. So if you feel like the information is important, just give it to them.
There is some truth to that. So
it's my analogy would be, if the traffic looks too busy and you say, I'm going to flip a coin to see if I should run in front of these trucks, you should just not run in front of the truck.
It's true. So with that, do you guys want to switch gears and talk a little bit about
I did want to add
campaigns?
I did want to add one more thing about GMing.
Sure.
One of the things for me GMing, two things that I wanted to add were, one, for me GMing became like an important thing because as the kid that didn't drink or anything, it became a big social aspect for me. And it also allows you to kind of keep, when you're GMing, it allows you to also to keep like a safe space at the table. Like, it allows you to be, if you're an introvert or you have friends that are introverts, you can build an environment that they're comfortable interacting with other people through these other characters. And so it can be pretty important for being social, I think. And I think that's always the thing that, one of the things that has helped me a lot, I think, be more social too, is being able to play different characters. So that's the other thing I wanted to add. Take a chance.
No, it's an excellent point. And this is one of my favorite stories ever. When I owned, part of a comic book gaming store, we had a customer who came in who, honestly, they were shy. Like, you could talk to them and you wouldn't really get looked in the eye, right? Like, you'd get under the breath sort of mumbled answers, and I don't know if it was shyness, anxiety, whatever it was, it doesn't really matter. But they were very quiet, even when you helped them out and interacted with them. I went to a convention here once, and I was invited to observe a LARP because I have never LARPed before. It's not really been my thing. And so I am there just as an observer. Everybody knows that I'm just an observer, but I see this person who I've known for years, and they've always been very quiet. I think it was a Vampire Masquerade LARP. They're walking around, shirt off, like a rock star, talking to everyone. And I'm like, and it's possible that it was the social thing, but in my mind, I was like, that's one of the great things about playing games and role playing. And to Brent's point, within whatever character they were playing, that was what that character did. And even if it wasn't what they did in their everyday life, it opened up a door for them to experience what it's like to be like, hey world, I'm here and I am fabulous. And you felt it. I felt it as an observer of the game and the people engaging with them in the game. It was impressive. It was like, wow, it's one of those don't judge a book by its cover kind of things. But that's the beauty of being able to use a character to exhibit traits that you don't normally exhibit.
Yeah, I agree.
And I have to say that, it just shows the diversity of it. Because, there's like LARPing has always been one of those things that I have not been brave enough to LARP. I'll just say it like that. Just getting so full into the character, getting dressed up, doing the big LARPs that people do. Because there are some really, like, well, the crazy part is there are some really big LARPs
there are
out there. There was like, did I send you that thing that city that springs up in Canada that they have the multi-year campaign?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
And I was like, that is absolutely bonkers. And it's just like, I'm just like, I just can't. I mean, I feel like I should, and I feel like I could, like, maybe get into it, but there's just something like I'm a naturally introverted person, as I say, speaking into the ether at the YouTubes,
the abyss.
That possibly people could watch this that are not us three. Please.
You mean somebody may watch us and go, that's the three coolest guys. I hope when I'm their age, I've got it going on like they do.
Oh, yeah, the three coolest guys.
That is by far not.
Yeah, I'm just at the point in my life where I'm like, I think we have fun. I think we can share some tips and tricks and things with people that, I think you get something out of it if you watch, but if we're not your cup of tea, then move along.
I agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, as for LARPing, I'm very introverted too. I tend to be. And I haven't LARPed because I don't know. It's like doing character voices. Like, it's very hard for me.
You don't own a cape, Brent.
I
but
don't
we could buy you one.
I don't own a cape. It's true. If I gray my hair, I make an excellent wizard. But I don't know. LARPing was always a little too much for me. Like, telling a story. I like being a GM and I like telling a story, but I don't know if I want to be an actor, I guess is what I'm.
Well, I think that's reasonable, right? That's the thing. Like, not everyone wants to play card games. Not everyone wants to play board games. Not everyone wants to play role-playing games. But for most people, you can find a game that they like to play. Most people play stuff with their families.
I have known people who LARPed and absolutely loved it. So
yeah, a lot of people do. And they all talk about these groups that they're in that they've been together for years. You know what I mean? Like, they break down when somebody moves.
Yeah.
So closing on the LARPing, did you guys want to move on to the next topic then?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Keep us on task.
So
we may wander.
We obviously have a strictly programmed.
Yeah, Mike, you're off script again. I'm gonna have to.
May wander would be.
We're gonna have to edit this part out.
May wander would be
that shit.
May wander would be good subtext for the entire podcast.
Yeah, well, so in case anybody's at this point, we do wander and we do have meandering thoughts because this is more of a conversation among friends, and we sprinkle it generously with our experience. So, so this is something that was interesting, and it's kind of a thought that germinated both from something I was reading and then of course something that we played when we did Monster of the Week, because there is a, and I complained about this with some of the other kinds of games where I remember making the comment, at least, that I was like, I really don't see how this plays, how this becomes a longer campaign, because I feel like there's your one shot, which, as we recently discussed, it doesn't necessarily mean just like one evening, but it's kind of like a very small, tight, compact story that only really revolves around executing certain adventure. And sometimes that can be that can be a little bit, and one shot means tends to be on the shorter side. For us, that tends to be 2 sessions, maybe 3 sessions, because we only play an hour and a half to 2 hours at night because we're old people. And then there's the adventure, which is like kind of a more robust adventure. And correct me if you guys have different perceptions of these, where, it's usually an adventure. Maybe there's some side questing that happens or something like that, but it's not really a long form campaign. Then there's a long form campaign that can take months or years, depending on how your group plays. And I feel like, for me, I've always kind of thought like the rules light games made for a less intriguing long form campaign, because I feel like, for me, it's all about the numbers. Like, ooh, I'm now a level 7 fighter. Like, I kind of have that video game mentality that has scrambled my brain a little bit. So maybe it's a part of me probably can't see the bigger picture as to how some of these role-playing games can provide a longer form campaign. But I want to kind of throw that question out to you. How do you guys feel like you play a long form campaign in these rules light game? Like, how does that look to you? Like, what kind of things do you feel are necessary for it? And yeah, I guess I'll stop with the questions, because I don't want to get 30 questions in.
No, you're good. I think one distinction that I make is I split it up into one shots and campaigns, and that's it. I think anything more than a couple weeks of meeting once a week, I think fits in a campaign. And I've changed my opinion on that a little bit from when I was younger, because it's so hard to think of running one game for 5 years or 4 years or whatever. And I don't think a lot of games are designed that way anymore. Like that is one strength that D&D has, that Pathfinder has, is the way that they make you make characters are characters kind of, I feel like, that are designed for long-term campaigns. And I think that's also why the thing that I hate the most about Pathfinder and like 5th edition is the fact that the first 5 levels don't mean anything. But that's a way to stretch that. That's a way to stretch it into that campaign mindset, is, you're a little bit better every time. I think anymore, like long form games, 6 months to a year, I think you can do that with a lot of the rules light systems. More in the thing that is important for campaign games is, one, like not every day being the same, like not every game session or story arc being the same sort of thing, and 2, a sense of character growth that is either numeric, which is where D&D and Pathfinder come in. You are better at this. Or giving a sense of accomplishment to the players through story knowledge, character ability, or character growth in itself. I think one reason that it's hard in some of the minimalist games, like for me, so like this is kind of what I'm basing it on. Since we're playing Over the Edge, doing an Over the Edge one shot, I think Over the Edge would be a game that I could run for an extended period of time fairly easily. I think I could give the players a level of accomplishment without, like, there is a level up sort of system, but it's pretty loose. But I think I could give the players a sense of accomplishment just through adventuring and character growth, and maybe tossing them new abilities once in a while, and keeping the story interesting by it being versatile. I think Over the Edge being a rules light system, I think I could do that in Over the Edge. A game like Monster of the Week, like it's in the title, it's Monster of the Week. Like you are going to fight a monster in every story arc. Keeping that fresh and interesting might not be as easy, because you know how the plot hooks are going to go. I think that's really in my opinion, more the key to a lasting game is the story arcs and gaming sessions feeling different. Like them not just being Like this month, this is one of the reasons why I developed a problem with D&D is because the games I started playing in D&D stopped being stories and they started being, we are killing a vampire this week. We're killing a dragon this week. We're killing a tribe of gnolls this week. And those stories just aren't as interesting. Well, they're not stories.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible. Like but I think you have to define for yourself, what do you consider a long game, like a campaign? And then you have to define for yourself, what do you consider, and you have to work with your players at this too, is what do you consider growth? Like if your players, like, so the Shadowrun starts out, if you run a base run-of-the-mill Shadowrun game, your characters start out as absolute badasses. Like they start out as a 10th level D&D character. Like they're supposed to be experienced Shadowrunners. So it's important that the players have a goal. Like, what is your character? What do you want? Why is your character Shadowrunning? What do they want to do? Oh, my character eventually wants to retire and become a fixer, and so he doesn't have to do Shadowruns anymore. He can set up Shadowruns for other people. Like that sort of thing is important to work towards that goal, because they're not going to have those incremental bumps in power level that you see in D&D. So you have to figure out other ways to reflect character growth.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, one of the things as I was reading is they were talking about there are two main growth ways, right? There's the kind of like that I grow, I get higher and higher in level, and therefore I gain associated skill sets associated with that. And so my numbers, it represents in my numbers, and so it represents like a sense of growth. So and I hate to say, like I said, the video game part of my brain goes,
yeah, game growth.
Okay. It's like, okay, so now when we go into that pack of kobolds, I can kill the pack of kobolds because I have the ability to swing my sword better, or I have multiple attacks, or I have something like that. Whereas games like Fabula Ultima, it has a vertical growth and and then they also call it, the kind of thing of like horizontal growth, and so much as that it's not really mechanically making your character like higher or better at a certain number, but you do have things that round out your character.
So it gives you more options. Like it's not, I can pick from one of these 2 or 3 things in combat. Not to focus it on combat. It's just the easiest example off the top of my head. All of a sudden you have, if you play for 6 months, you've got 7 or 8 things that you can choose from, and it lets you, I think it feels more cinematic. You feel development, right? Whether it's power creep, right, which is going to be natural. You want things to feel like they're coming easier. So like in an investigation game, maybe after 5 levels, you get some sort of +1 to your roll. Like I don't want to break a 2d6 system, where +1 is actually a pretty big swing. +2 it's really hard to miss. But I think there's probably things that you can do. And some of the systems have some stuff built in, right? Where you can get more experience. I don't think you have to be able to go from level 1 to 20, say, or 1 to 50 or whatever the heck. But if I'm playing in a campaign, I want my characters to feel more competent 3 months from now. Maybe not in everything, right? But I want there to feel like in real life, like that I finally have figured out what I'm doing and move on to the next skill, right? Even though I'm doing similar things.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of interesting to me, because I feel like D&D may have a lot of combat in it, and maybe that people feel like everything has to be represented mechanically, but I don't think any system inherently leaves out that rounding out of your characters, because you can have people that are well built in any system. It's just that some systems are better at representing mechanically your improvement, whereas like in a narrative game, it's hard to like represent that, because Vaesen had a very limited lifespan on how and like the kind of stuff that you advance to mechanically, but you could have really good stories with your investigators, and you could build additional skill sets and stuff like that would help you be better at more things, kind of like you're saying, Jeff. You just would never get that, like you just wouldn't be calling down thunder from the heavens kind of thing.
No, you wouldn't, but you would get to know those characters better. Like in the Delta Green game that Brent ran for us, right? I actually think that we had 2 relatively interesting characters that over time would have evolved by developing a better relationship with each other and discovering more about themselves and their skills and their past, because we would have been forced to at times to come up with stuff from their past, right? Like, oh, I have this skill because in my past I've done this. And I think that's a reward. I think it can be a rewarding player experience, just to feel like, wow, it's not just this stupid name that I picked and a bunch of numbers that I rolled. It's this character that I've actually grown and developed and built, and he's got a history, and he's got stupid tics when he talks, and I don't know that you need to go that far. We're not professional actors.
Well, no, I think your point is 100% true, and I think that's the difference between more narrative games. Is you're building characters in a narrative sense, as in, I'm writing this character, I'm living this character and their life. And like in Delta Green, a lot of times the shit that's going to happen to your character isn't going to make them better. It's actually going to probably make them worse. But the character
I'm just crazier now. And
the character has grown. I'm now divorced, and I had to give him my dog, that sort of stuff. But the character has grown and dealt with these things. Whereas like D&D is very much focused on, I am mechanically better at X,
yeah, and it doesn't have to be combat, but it's negotiating, it's charming, it's thieving, it's right, because you're improving your skills,
right? And it's the difference between and I think this is something that you have to discuss with your players and have the right players, because there are definitely players that are gonna be like, they're more gamist, they're more I want to obviously be better at hitting things. But I think
communication improves the group dynamic. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and like,
write that down.
And you can kind of steer people that way. Like you can kind of help people understand. Like, I mean, it's a breakthrough the first time a character is like, oh, we've played 25 sessions and I haven't had one stat increase, but my character's important. Like my character is really cool. Like I really enjoy playing my character, and that's like a breakthrough for most D&D. Like most players who just play D&D, like it's like an intervention, because if that's all you've ever played, that's all you ever know, and now you have this character that's like, oh, it's like we made a person. Like,
so cool. And I think that it can happen in any type of game, but it's just that the narrative games have an interesting way of allowing you to still accomplish things. Because I think that's where I kind of have been hung up, is that, in the character, for me, I couldn't see necessarily mechanically, if I'm not getting better, how can I take on stronger and stronger opponents? Because that's you kind of run into that Marvel problem a little bit, like let's say you have a well thought out campaign, or a well thought out evil person that's big bad evil guy that they may not be evil, they may just be misunderstood, I don't know, whatever. So you get to that point, but it's like, well, how do you go from fighting, so like who are some of the original, like the Mandarin, all the way up to fighting Thanos, or at least stymieing Thanos, and all that kind of stuff, when you don't have good mechanical things to do that, because it's just you just don't. So I mean, it is an interesting concept for me, because I felt that you needed to have those mechanics to support that. And not to say that every game is going to be a superhero-esque game. I just apparently like, power fantasy, I guess. I don't know. Whatever.
Well, no, and liking power fantasy is fine. It's just one of the things that I think was a revelation for me was, I'm going to use video games as an example, was Oblivion versus something like Elden Ring. Like Oblivion, basically, you have a hard time. I had a hard time in Oblivion because all of the areas kind of level up with you. Like you never walk into even like the starter town. You don't walk into the starter town and aren't really more powerful than anyone there. Like the atmosphere kind of levels up with you. So like you're never going to be, like you said earlier, you're never going to be level 10 and going to that cave of level 5, level 1 kobolds and just slaughter them. Like they're always going to be sort of, I think Oblivion's the game. I don't remember what game it was. So if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I hope people understand what I'm saying is, like the world levels up with you to a degree, either percentage wise or whatever. So you're never that much more powerful than everywhere else. versus say like Elden Ring, where Elden Ring is like if you go back to the starting area, like you can just smash anything. If you're level 100, like you can smash anything in the starting area. There's still a chance,
except for that guy on the gold horse.
No, level 100, you should be able to smash him if you're built right. But he's there to show you that you shouldn't always face everything in the starting area. You should occasionally run away.
Yeah.
But like you can go get back and just bash everything. And like the thing is, in most D&D games, you're never going to go back to that kobold cave anyways. So like it's purely the moment of saying you are 5% better at hitting someone because you have that +1 now. Mm-hmm. Like it's just psychological. And so like if you can shift that psychology into just thinking of how character growth as a rewarding experience, like that was the breakthrough for me, is like your GM's never going to design a scenario for you where you just walk through the kobolds. Like it's not going to happen that often.
Not often,
unless they're a brilliant GM. Like storytelling wise, like that would be brilliant, and maybe probably made to make you feel guilty. Like
guilty.
Like you need to go rescue these. You need to okay, level 10 warriors. You need to go and rescue these 5 kids that got kidnapped. All right, we go in that kobold den. Oh, they can't hurt us. Oh yeah, we just kill them all. All right, You murdered 300 baby kobolds and women and children, and now you should feel guilty about being murder hobos. Like,
and they were just trying to start a small business. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had gone legit, and then you killed them. I feel like that would be, I always hate those kind of situations where the GM perverts the expectations because there wasn't good communication, but I won't talk about that tonight. The idea being is that and I think that it's interesting because I personally, I haven't been in so many games that have been long enough to really see that rounding out of the character. And I think that's probably why my brain didn't actually think about that dimension of it, is because when we play one shots, it's really hard to have, appreciate how your character grows over time, because you just don't you're kind of like these are just disposable characters. They have enough investment to be fun for the time being, but they don't have enough investment to let's lean on Critical Role. Some of those characters have such amazing story arcs over the seasons that they do that, you just go, oh my gosh, like some of the, because when you're watching highlights of Critical Role and you have some people that are super fans that have threaded together story arcs of a character that are like, this payoff took 53 episodes to get to, and you're like, my God, that's obviously that's an amazing payoff, but you just don't see it if you don't get into those long form campaigns. And I hate to say, like, most of my longest campaigns have been, they've fizzled out. They've one of my campaigns, summer happened, and then it just never got picked back up. They're like right around the holidays, I always worry about having a long game going, right? Because the holidays, everyone starts having scheduling conflicts for various reasons. I can't blame them that I am not the number one priority in their friends list, but
I think one of the things that I think happens in more D&D games, and I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the games that you probably had, your longer games, have been D&D style games.
I'd say most of them have been, and usually it's I've been running some of the pre-generated content lately,
right? So I think this is one of those differences, is because you look at your character, and I think this is something that Critical Role does very well, is they make characters that are characters, and not just a fighter or a wizard or whatever. And so like your Delta Green characters, like, you guys seem to want to play more of those characters at the end of the one shot. It's because you've made good characters. Like, even though they were pre-gens, you guys breathe life into those characters. And I think at a lot of times in D&D games, I just don't think the way the characters are generated, you have to change your mindset a lot to get into those characters. Like, there's been a lot of D&D characters, like, I don't even really remember who the character was. I just remember what they was. I was like, oh yeah, that's when I played the thief. versus like that was one thing that was like that was one of the things that I thought was interesting about that we did well in our Pathfinder game most recently. Like my character, I really liked my character. Like I really like Iz because I felt like he was a good character, and he didn't do very many thief things most of the time. Most of the time, it was just him talking, and maybe he attacked things sometimes to whatever ability. That was my fault, not his. But like I liked it, but I enjoyed playing the character. And so as the character grows, like if we continue that campaign, as Iz got like as Iz started building his tiny critical town, tiny criminal empire in whatever new town that he's in. He that would be character growth, and that's not that wouldn't be statistics, that would be purely character, and that was what my goal was with the character, and I think that's what you need to make, and I think it is lacking sometimes in games that really focus on mechanical growth.
And I have to say, I think that was a really helpful step that we took in the creative process, was that everyone had wants that their character was pursuing that was above and beyond, like, oh, you all got a letter in a tavern, and so like go do this job, like that was that. I mean, that could have been part of it. It wasn't really how the game was operating, but it was interesting because you guys did take the time to flesh out those different things, and so you guys acting in accordance with those wants made for a much more interesting play, because Iz was always like, the shoe's about to drop. Like, I can tell the shoe's about to drop. I'm a criminal. I've been building up my network, and there's definitely problems there are cracks in the soil. Things are about to happen.
You told the cops what?
I think I have to say that's probably my favorite thing, because it's like when you say, okay, well they call you in for questioning, and then the player says, oh, I tell them everything, and then the other player goes, what? And then the DM goes, everything, and they go, yes, everything.
Open book, man. Open book.
I'm being 100% truthful.
I thought we had an agreed upon 80% of the truth story.
It was like that scene from the Goonies where he's like Chunk starts being like, and when it was 5.
What was the movie? She was buying. Was it one of the Beverly Hills Cop ones?
Yep.
He was buying the Super Cop story.
Yeah.
Before the guys are like, wait, no, we got to tell you, we got to be honest. He's like, I got to tell you, he was buying the Super Cop.
He was buying the Super Cop story.
Yeah, but it was just hilarious because I just kind of dropped my jaw and I was like,
oh man, it was a good thing I wasn't on camera during that time, because I definitely had this look on my face that would not,
No, I sat up. I was like, you did what? We just talked about and that's fine. Like, everybody's going to play their character.
That's perfect.
That part's brilliant.
Yeah,
it just was surprising.
It was awesome. I loved it.
It was just not what my character.
Oh, so now we need to leave town. That's what you're saying.
It was just not what my character.
We're no longer members of the Pathfinder Society. Got it.
Well, the Pathfinder Society had been deemed a terrorist organization.
Iz was just like, oh, I'm glad I had that go bag packed. Jesus.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean that's the and that's brilliant, and I think that's the cool part about being a character. And I think the thing is about these long campaigns, it's like you can have a long campaign. I think personally, like Shadowrun, you can have a long campaign where your character doesn't actually grow at all, statistically, but you have to have things that become important, like reputation. Your character's reputation has to be better. Your contacts have to go up. They have to have a goal. Stuff like that. And I think that's the key to a longer campaign. It isn't necessarily experience and character growth. It is experience, but it's not numerical experience. It's player experience and character experience.
Yeah.
It's making a session end and saying, hey, I'd like to play those characters again.
Yeah. And we'll see if that Pathfinder game resurrects. It's been a minute. I've got a lot of ideas about what we can do in it, but I'm feeling like the crunchier systems I've been less inclined to play.
I feel like if it comes back and shows up in town again, it's because he's been gone for 6 months in the woods, and he's going to come in with like a cloak, and he's going to have like a goblin-y beard and long hair, and people are going to be like, "Are you so and so?" And he's going to be like, "Nope, never heard of her."
That's fair. Okay, so I think at this point we've we've kind of talked about the two main topics. So I did want to leave a few moments open for us to possibly share any games that people might want to think about looking at. Maybe they haven't heard about it, maybe they have, who knows? But obviously, Candela Obscura has had a chance to release. It is available on the Critical Role website. You can get the limited edition for $60. It has been sitting in my cart because I have not. I've seen people have some fairly critical comments about it, but I mean, we'll see. I think the artwork and everything like that is probably worth the price of entry, but
just haven't committed yet.
I just haven't committed yet. But I've also wanted to plug really quick the fact that there is a new Dune game. Is it a game or source book? It's an adventure compendium. So what they've done is they've taken a bunch of digital content for adventures. They've kind of sewn them together and created a longer campaign out of it. The book is aptly titled Dune Desert Planet Adventure Compendium Volume 1, which Modifius and their naming conventions don't make that sound very sexy. I mean, I think they were doing the Dune Desert Planet.
Like that's the key. That's the part that you need to stress, because that's the part that I hear in my head from the movie.
Yeah. So there's actually it's a full cover hardcover, and it includes expanded details on Arakeen. So you can have more city details, which I mean Arakeen is major hub there, so it's nice to have.
Sure.
You get 3 new adventures designed to introduce your people to Arrakis, and then you get 4 full adventures collected in print, so you can play those as well. So it provides you a lot of different opportunities to do this, and I do have to say that Dune has got to be on our playlist at some time in the near future. So
okay,
I agree. I'm down.
Yeah. So that's the main plug that I have is get Dune, support Dune, love Dune. Don't join a cult about it, but just
go visit Modifius website. Look at their games. They have I find like I enjoy most of the games that they put out these days, both licensed and non-licensed.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, they got good stuff.
That's my plug.
Go to Modifius.
We are not sponsored by Modifius, nor do I know anybody that works there. So
that's fair.
And apparently, if you can have a 10% discount for the following using Verify Pass. I don't know what Verify Pass is, but you can actually get discounts from their community. So
nice.
Like being a military, first responder, medical, teaching, students, senior citizens, nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Spiffy.
Yeah, 10% off. Doesn't hurt. Jeff, did you have any games out there that you had seen, Kickstarter or otherwise, that we wanted to throw?
I haven't seen anything new on Kickstarter. I will pay a little bit more attention. It's the hard part with Kickstarter is that we're now into games delivering in like July or August of next year or later. Even though it's the Christmas season for everybody, don't buy somebody a Kickstarter game for Christmas.
No.
Buy something that's actually on the shelves.
They're not going to
your friendly local gaming store or favorite, website. Actually get them an actual book or actual PDF in some cases.
Don't get them a promise.
Yes.
That may or may not be a promise.
Exactly.
That's definitely the thought that counts gift.
Yeah, no, I've talked about trying to time like Kickstarter things for the they're like shipping in October almost always means shipping in March of the following year.
Yeah. It's true. So, yeah.
So, alrighty, guys. Well, I think we can go ahead and call that our show today. Thank you for anybody that's made it to this far, and hopefully you enjoyed everything you listened to. Jeff, do you want to send them some contact details so we can become pen pals? And Brett, do you want to send us home?
You can look for us at Rollwise on Threads, X, YouTube, and Facebook. And you can get us by email at rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, as Mike said, thank you everybody who joined us and made it this far. We look forward to sharing more thoughts with you in the future. As always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
See ya.